Okay, good morning, everyone. So, what I'm going to be discussing today is a really important attribute of relationships, one that you will have heard about with a lot of people. And sorry, I'm just trying to fix my view here. It's not working for some reason. Give me one sec. Sorry, guys. All right, there we are. Apologies. So, trauma bonding. Trauma bonding. We hear a lot about trauma bonding out there, but it's a very specific structure that happens, and it happens with a lot of relationships, but most people don't really know what those actually are and how it is structured. So, firstly, when I'm working with these kinds of structures, we have to understand what we're interacting with before we can actually heal it. So most people want to look in isolation, like an attachment style behavior, nervous system regulation. All that stuff is really good, but what happens with it is that it will only get you so far. Okay, so like a trauma bond, you've got to know how to identify it when you're in it. Most people just think because I'm traumatized, I'm bonded with someone and it's chaotic, then it's a trauma bond. And most of the time that's accurate, but most people don't know how to identify it when they're actually in it. They confuse intensity for intimacy, they confuse significance for love, and quite simply, it's not it. So we have to understand the structure that we're interacting with fully. Okay. Before you can resolve it, you've got to know the full system. So, as an example, what's an example? Like when you're building your body, you can't just go do bicep curls to build your body up. You build one part of it up and you'll get a dumbbell, but you're going to need things like multiple things of equipment. You need to be able to move. You need to go through a rep range. You need to understand it. You need diet, range of motion, recovery, the weight, increase it, etc., etc. And you need a location. So relative to this, we have to understand the way that the brain works in a trauma bond. Okay. So we look at this when we're in a trauma bond. The brain is a connection device. And the connection device is going to create links that create comparison for predictability. The brain is all about predictability. It just wants to predict and protect, anticipate. This is why there's these funny memes with the brain. It's like all day doesn't work, and then at nighttime it's like, let's look up certain things that mean nothing or think that we're dying, right when we're trying to go to sleep. And so it's a prediction machine. Dreams are a really interesting one that get produced as a way to process things in the middle of the night. But when the brain is anticipating some type of threat, it will start to produce dreams of anticipation where you wake up worried about things. So this is no different in waking life. So I want you to think about the brain as a connection device to create comparisons, to create connection and predictability. Now, what happens with that, it's going to go into your childhood and signal comparison. This is why we date people similar to our parents. Now, this will help make sense of how a trauma bond actually works, because the trauma bond, you need three things. You need an element of seduction, you need an element of fear, and you need an element of power. Okay, these three things, and the thing that underwrites it is betrayal. You will find in every single trauma bond, betrayal is the thing that underwrites it all. Either you're betraying yourself, you're betrayed by another, there'll be cheating involved, there will be lies, dishonesty. It will rarely ever be a happy, healthy relationship, and these people will try to hold on to it because it's like a drug. So we will start to make meaning from it because of the intensity of the connection. This is why it's like a drug. This is why romantic love is the most powerful drug on the planet. This is why dating apps do very well, because everyone's just going, oh, they're the one. Oh, they're the one. Oh, they're the one. And it's intense, intense, intense. So you get the honeymoon phase, which I think we've all been in one of those, and how intense they are, and they can be, very enjoyable. But when that condition is from childhood, it's maladaptive, and you go through it in order to heal it. Because we don't split from our parents anymore like they did in tribes when we were young, now nature, in my opinion, has set up relationships to be the process by which we split from our parents. This is why you'll almost see universally when someone does the work properly and splits from the partner that's like the parent that they had the most difficulty with, afterwards, they'll usually end up in the relationship like their long-termer. They'll meet their person, right? When you're sitting there, you hear a lot of people go, I'm just wondering if it's my person, if it's my forever person. If you're wondering that, generally you're in a maladaptive relationship, in my opinion. The reason why is because there's a reason why there's the saying, when you know, you know. And generally what I see is stability. Not even generally, it's universal. When there's safety and stability and there's not chaos, at first that will feel very boring if you're used to trauma bonds like I was. And not so much even boring, you'll have to repattern the way that you identify relationships and relating because it won't be the same. And once you get through it, you'll attract someone in and you'll actually find the stability very entertaining. You'll find it very satisfying and you'll find it very fulfilling. Intense relationships are not. You just go, it becomes repellent. It's a really interesting process because I went through that. So anyway, the more that we make meaning about something, especially when it's a trauma bond through comparison, you will see this everywhere in the form of people looking for spiritual signs to confirm the meaning of the relationship. This will be done through astrology. It will be done through angel numbers. It'll be done through animals showing up, all of this stuff, okay? Now, what will happen with that, people will start to go, I was working with a guy, he's a coach, he's a mate of mine. And he said, I know when I see, I think it's 43, it's 43, 43 everywhere. That's when I know I'm on the right track. And I said, okay, cool. So you ask for a sign in a relationship. And this is typically what trauma bonded people will do. They will look for meaning in everything and they will make meaning through confirmation bias. And he said, yeah, it's 43, 43, 43 everywhere. Every time I said him right, I'm like, cool. How many times a day do you see it? And he said, oh, at least 8 to 10 times a day. I said, okay, give or take once an hour that you're awake. He goes, yeah, which is a lot. I said, okay, cool. Have you counted how many times you don't see it? And his whole world collapsed. So I said, okay, cool. We've been on this call for 21 minutes. It's 10:15 in the morning. You know, like I started to pull all these numbers out for him to disconfirm his confirmation bias. When we're in a trauma bond, this is what we look for. So people will sit there and say, you know, it's a full moon, it's a Cancer moon, it's, you know, Aries season. They seek meaning or they even give over meaning to things like this in order to confirm their bias. This is what trauma bonds do. Okay, but it helps make sense of the world. And this is where we create meaning. Human beings are meaning-making machines. The powerful part, and I won't be teaching it in this school, I'll be doing it in a course I'm doing in January, is that life is meaningless. Now, this challenges a lot of people because when I say, what's the first thing that comes to you that life is meaningless? And people will generally say, what's the point? I give up. You know, they go to defend, go, no, no, it does mean something. But where they get mixed up is that I never said that life was pointless or purposeless. I just said it was meaningless. And there's a big distinction between that. When you realize that you make the meaning up, it means you can dissolve it. That's how powerful you are. We think that meaning is just inherent in the fabric of the architecture of this reality, and it's not. We make it up, and it's through language. When we get life is meaningless, but there's a purpose to it, we can start to dismantle our limiting beliefs because they don't mean anything. And I know that's a big stretch to get to. And I'd heard about this a long time ago, and intellectually I could get it, but now I actually can live it. You can divorce meaning from anything if you want. And it's a very powerful way to live life. With trauma bonds, because things are in the nervous system, the intensity of the meaning becomes so significant, most people feel like dying when they're actually getting away from this. It can feel like dying when you're in a trauma bond getting out of it. And it mirrors similar patterns to withdrawing from a drug. But you're withdrawing from your identity, not a drug. That's the important part of it. So the stronger the recognition between links by comparison, the more ingrained our neural pathways become with this. And so this is why when we're in these really intense relationships, the most common thing that happens is we get triggered. Triggers are very intense. When we get triggered by someone, we develop a connection to them. And then they will project onto the person that triggers them. I cop this a lot publicly. People that don't even know me make stuff up about me because I trigger them. And they form ideas and opinions, which is just projection. It's like I can't remember the saying. It's what someone says about you is not it's not an accurate, it's not a revelation, it's a confession or something like that. Generally, that's what will happen. But people get triggered so readily because of trauma. So it's a trigger hits at the first stage with what's familiar. Okay, so when we meet someone that's similar from a vibrational level to one of our parents, generally the one we didn't get the love we wanted from, familiarity hits. Bonding starts to occur. It becomes a noticeable, familiar vibrational signature in physics. So the magnetism is right there. And so it's like so magnetic. And then what happens unconsciously, you will say, this person's perfect for my healing, but they're incompatible with me for a relationship. Consciously, it's, oh my God, I've met the one. It's amazing. You know, we're both Leos and whatever. Unconsciously, it's like this person's completely incompatible, but I'm here to do the work. So we find what's familiar. That's where we get triggered. Then we get triggered again and again through repetition. Everything is about repetition with a trauma bond. So we get triggered, we meet this person, it's familiar, there's an intense chemical reaction, there's a strong emotional reaction, neural pathways start to strengthen through the repetition, and then the familiar keeps happening. You can literally see in a trauma bonded relationship, the same things will happen at the same time intervals, under the same circumstances, in the same way, and the same things are said. The amount of times I've worked with couples and people, especially around a woman's cycle, so it'll usually be a couple of days before they bleed, a woman, and every 3 to 4 weeks, they'll have a blow up. Might be peaceful all the rest of the time, but just before the woman bleeds, bam, it'll fire up and pressure will come out to release, just as she's releasing, because just before a woman bleeds, there's a lot of pressure. And the bond will create the pressure release, the pressure valve will release, they'll argue, they'll split, and they'll come back together. And this will usually replicate what happened in childhood. It's usually a separation at birth. Usually the person's put in an incubator or ICU or separated for a little while for some reason. And you'll see this cycle again and again and again and again. This is where the trauma bond happens. So what makes the neural connection stronger is likeness and familiarity, the trauma of the connection, the emotional intensity, and then repetition. So the good thing about this, they're actually pretty easy to overcome because you decondition through repetition the same way that you condition yourself to be in the trauma bond through repetition. So remember this, trauma plus intensity creates significance in the nervous system. Everyone doing all this nervous system work all the time, there's definitely a place for it. But you have to understand this comes from the brain. Repetition, trauma, likeness, and intensity creates the significance. Most people that end up in trauma bonds are just trying to get the love from this person that they didn't get from the parent that they have the maladaptive relationship with. Okay, it's very important to understand this because once you've got the awareness, you can start to make different choices. That's the thing with this work. I can't give you something you don't already have, but I can help you to make a choice by removing what's in the way. Why people want money is not because they want money, is they want choice. They want freedom. Freedom comes in the ability to choose. It's the most powerful thing we have. And so when everyone says that they want more money, generally it's because they're trying to buy their way out of some sort of pain, some sort of repetition, which they are, which is their identity. I'll give you an example. I worked with a guy yesterday and he would get money and then he would spend it like he has a lot more money. And I used to be like that. It's a very familiar pattern. And what happened is he had a relationship to money that was unstable. Okay, instability he learned from his father, so he recreates his home environment in the form of security, now through money instead of his father. When he was 8, he was given $15,000, or his grandfather gave his mother $15,000 for him. He went and bought a $5,000 BMX at the time and said, I'll spend the rest later. So he would go and do things thinking that this money was there and plan for it, put purchases out. He was only 8, so he would start to anticipate. And what happened is later in life, he would do the same thing. So he'd spend more than what he earned. When he went to get the money from his mum when he was like 9 or 10, the mother had spent the money and said it's not there. So he'd recreated his home environment, one event that happened, to replicate his relationship with his father through money. And he was still doing the same thing that was completely unconscious. This is how these bonds work. Familiarity creates likeness. Likeness starts to create intensity and significance. So then he'd get rid of the money. It was in and out with his money. It would generate intensity in his nervous system through fear and anticipation and worry, the same way as he grew up. We're always recreating our environment in the external world is the same way we grew up. Our unconscious models for love are the same way that we grew up in childhood. They're the same way. This is, I had another man that I was working with and he goes, I want you to teach me how to be resilient and have capacity for difficult things like you. And I said, you have plenty of capacity for difficult things. And I'm sure everyone that's in this school community and everyone I work with has an immense capacity for difficult things. I would almost say universally, what none of you has is a large capacity for peace. I know because that was me. And most people think, yeah, I want peace, but their life isn't really working like that. Having is evidence of wanting. And most people, and this is what had landed for him in a really big way, I said, you need to cultivate capacity for silence and stillness and peace. He grew up in a super abusive, traumatic household. He's very good at taking on difficult situations. He wasn't very good at saying no to difficult situations. Having a capacity for peace is the thing we need to work on, and we do that by removing the difficult things. So, intensity, when most people think of intensity, they think of usually drama and dramatic things and difficult things, arguments, fights, smashing shit, blowing up, taking drugs, all of that. But intensity can also be things like laughter. It can be sex. There can be elements of physical pleasure. These can also be part of it as well. So the greater the intensity in the nervous system, the stronger the neural connection to this person becomes. Okay, this is where narcissistic relationships, and I'll be teaching about narcissism in another one because I still get a lot of messages about that, and a lot of people still don't really understand how that structure works and what it's for. But a trauma bond is how a narcissist will get you, and it'll be through cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is where you can't see the bad, you can only see the good. And I know a lot of you guys have been following me for a while, and you saw me go through that in my last relationship. And there's all these ways that people like that trap you to keep you addicted, and it's through this. Okay, if I was looking at teaching narcissism first, then trauma bonding, and I'm like, nah, let's go backwards. Because once you understand how trauma bonds work, you can make a choice to not engage in them. And that's very powerful when you do that because you withdraw from it, you can make different choices. So, The link in the space of the neural connection, right? So if like a neural connection is like this, it's A to B, it's N to N. What happens over time as this becomes stronger, it starts to go like this, and then it's abuser and target. And this becomes a power dynamic. So it'll go normal neural connection, becomes stronger and like muscularized almost, and it will be done in a very specific way. And then it goes bam, which is abuser target, and you become the target. So when we develop a bond, we have artificially and malignantly become falsely connected to the abuser, which gives them a power that they should not have. Okay, and this will be almost identical to the way that we relate to a parent. Now, this increases through what's called intermittent reinforcement. Okay, I think it was the 70s, they put a rat in a cage, and when it would hit a lever, a pellet would come down. So they did this 100, 200 times, hit the lever, pellet, hit the lever, pellet. After an extended period of time, they stopped the pellet coming down. After 3 or 4 hits of the lever, the rat just walked away and they were fine. Object constancy, being able to relate to the reward system, produced a secure attachment, you could say a secure attachment style, to say it was predictable. This is the same as a child getting love from a parent. It becomes secure. Now, what happened is when they didn't get it anymore, they walked off and they were like, okay, cool, that's all good. Now it's predictable. What they did is they started to drop the pellet down in intermittent time frames. So 3 on, 2 off, 5 on, 1 off, 15 on, 12 off. And the rat developed a neurosis just constantly hitting the lever and became neurotic and unhealthy. Now, if you look at this movement, that's the same as a poker machine. Intermittent reinforcement is what addicts us to the poker machines. They're wired for loss. It's no different to these relationships. Okay, now, it's like a punishment reward system. So it will usually be a little bit of love in the container of abuse. It'll be a little bit of acknowledgement in the container of disrespect. This is why generally you see in domestic violence relationship, the woman will keep going back. They're like, oh, he only does it once a month. It's intermittent reinforcement. They'll be very loving and then they'll be very violent. They'll be very up, they'll be very down. The reason why they stay is not because they want that to happen. It's because they're trauma bonded to them through intermittent reinforcement. So it becomes like a drug. Literally becomes like a drug. So the power structure or the trauma bond changes its direction from horizontal to vertical to abuser to target over time. Okay? And over time, with all the abuse, all the trauma, all the suffering, all the pain and anguish, this thing becomes almost like concrete in your brain. Okay, and these bonds are never, ever about love. They're never about love. They're only about power. I had it with the previous relationship that I was in. I don't want to talk too much about it because it was a great gift, that relationship. It freed me. But it was always about her trying to break me. And she has a history of broken men. If you really want to look at people that are real abusers, you just got to look at how their exes are. It doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman, but they will have a series of broken partners in the background. And when you look at broken people, like there's a trail of destruction in this person's wake for sure. And most people don't see that. They don't look at it because the abuser will always play the victim. Always. Okay, so you have to be understanding that these are never, ever, ever, ever about love. They're only about power. Always about power. So the stronger this becomes, the harder it is to leave. Why? Because your brain has become trained not to leave. This is why with a parent, like this, one of the hardest things you'll ever do is you become estranged from parents. And there's a little bit of a narrative forming out there. I think it's 25% of millennial onward are estranged from their parents or families. And there's an argument to say, are we becoming, less tolerant, which that's for sure out there, or are we just becoming more aware that our parents really fucked up? There's little from column A, a little from column B. I think that most of the time when they become estranged, I would say there's probably 50-50, less tolerant, more victim narratives out there, and more victim identity. For sure, that's one side. The other side, where it's more my case, I would say, where the system was actually a highly abusive functional system that still continues to this day, then you have a choice to step away from that and go, we're adults now. And one of the key indicators that I look for is, does the abuse continue? Yes. Do you feel confused or physically affected when you're around these people? Yes. And do these people genuinely consider your welfare and what you want, or do they try to get you to do what they want? If that's it, then I would start to say, okay, you need to look at this as two adults. And just because it's your mother or your father, would you want to hang out with this person based on your values, alignment, life, career, purpose, what you stand for, if they weren't related to you? And if it's a no, you can start to create distance if you want from that. You can stay in it. I'm not saying leave. I'm not saying stay. But if your physical health starts to decline while being in a relationship with either a parent, a sibling, a partner, a boss, whatever, that's the first indicator to say that you're in something very toxic. And it's very important to understand this. Your physical health will decline when you're with someone that is toxic. And I learned this through that last relationship. My health was in a very, very bad way. I had nearly died because of the amount of stress. And stress is the thing that they use to keep you trapped and chained. Stress releases adrenaline. Adrenaline is a chemical. That's the trauma bond. So, right, the thing about this though, how they get you so good to stay in the trauma bond is the repetition doesn't happen and breaking it. Sorry, I've got getting 2 points mixed up here. So one thing we have to look at is the repetition in breaking the bond. Repetition got us into it. Repetition gets us out of it. Now, when I discovered I was in an abusive relationship, this is very, very important for everyone to understand. The first thing that you will do is go into denial. You will double down on it and not be able to see it. And you will look for anything to disconfirm that they're an abuser. I had one thing in a previous relationship that I was with, and then she was very gentle with children. My mother wasn't, so I used that as to say, no, she's not like that. My sister literally said to me, she's exactly like mum, you need to get out. I had everyone reflected around me, I was just in denial. Why? Because I was trauma bonded. And how did that get maintained? Intermittent reinforcement, where she would weaponize sexuality, then break up, then come back, and it was these intense separations and reconnections. It's a pretty like solid little structure. If you want to abuse someone, like get after it. I'm not saying do it, but like they'll get it. They'll do it and they know what they're doing so well. It's so highly calculated. It's actually quite amazing how well they do it, to be honest. And denial is the way that you do it. And how do they get you into denial? They gaslight you. They make you confused. I had a good mate of mine. He was over at my house 6 months ago, and he said, I don't know if I'm being gaslit or not. And I said, do you feel confused all the time? He goes, yeah. And I said, then you're being gaslit. Confusion is the way that you know you're being gaslit. Okay, that's the way that you know. Someone will make you try to doubt your reality about what's happened. So it might be along the lines of, okay, I've used my previous relationship. I discovered that I was in a pattern with her where she would use the tactic of idealize, build me up, devalue, slowly tear me down, discard, break up, and then hoover me and pull me back in. Idealize, devalue, discard, hoover. And I took this to, I'd already broken up with her, and it was about a week later she tried to come back. And I said, you've been doing this tactic on me, and I finally see it. I discovered it in a book. I was in Bondi Beach having a coffee, and I started to shake when I read it because I finally realized what I was in. Like literally, I felt, I was sitting at I went into shock. And in the hoovering part, it said, when the narcissist is done abusing you, you will get a message saying, I'm ready to get married and I'm ready to have a kid. And I read this book over a couple of days because it was so overwhelming for me. And when I read the hoovering part, and hand on my heart, within an hour or so, I got that exact message from her saying that she was ready to get married and have a baby with me. The things that I wanted, you know, moving into that phase of my life. Now, when I sent this structure to her, she took a day to come back. She's like, that's really rattled me, you know, and I said, well, that's what you've been doing. And she said, and it was very important, she said, I'm sorry if you think that I did that. And that's where it was like my whole world opened up. And I said, and excuse the language, I said, I don't fucking think you've done that. You fucking did it. And that's where I started to go, okay, this was the first stage of breaking out of the trauma bond, self-validation. Sorry, it was two: destroying the shared fantasy and self-validation, validating my own experience. From that place, like just that one piece of code that she so kindly gifted me, opened up like a whole world of self-validating. I train people in this for assertiveness, manipulative relationships, self-validation, breaking the fantasy. It's all in your ability to understand the language that they use through means of like deflection, denial, dismissiveness, blaming, DAVO, which is deny, attack, reverse victim, offender. These are all language patterns that people use to try to tie you up. The more powerful you become is when you can confirm your reality and your experience, and then you can be with someone else. I can't tell you how solid you become internally when you rebuild the structures to validate your own experience through destroying shared fantasies and not being in trauma bonds. Very, very, very powerful stuff. No boss, no cop, no authority figure. No one will be able to get around you. And you become so assertive and solid. The only people that you'll piss off are the ones that previously tried to manipulate you. And this is where you become really solid. You can't manipulate yourself. You can't. And you'll see how interesting it is when you see this play out in your life. Because when people try to manipulate you, and they start to kick off and gaslight you and try to manipulate you again, that you become difficult, you become controlling, you become, oh, you've changed. So yeah, I have. And it's a very, very solid way to be able to get through life. So, denial. It's our strongest psychological defense. Our absolute strongest defense. So through a repetitive based approach that you've conditioned yourself to take on, we have to begin to neural recondition the experience and then decondition it. So what does that mean? Okay, what our abusers do to get us into a trauma bond, and some people that will watch this will have done this to people. What they do is it splits. We get into denial through splitting. The splitting becomes like angelic and vulnerable, and demonic and evil. Okay, so we'll look to this. So the angelic versus the demonic. The angelic will be vulnerable and open, supportive. They talk in a high-pitched voice. They're like, "Oh, sweetheart, hi," like they're very crafty in the way that they do that. They'll love animals and they'll be very kind. And this is the stuff that we'll get confused with, because they'll be like this and then they'll be impatient, quick temper, aggressive, judgmental, difficult to please. They'll continually change the goalposts. So this is the bad side. Now, this tactic, what happens is why it gets us into denial, because it creates massive confusion, which leaves the brain looking for meaning through looping, trying to figure it out. This is why it's so confusing. It's super confusing. And this is the seed of the trauma bond, and trauma bonds are formed, like I said, through familiarity, repetition, intensity, and all of that. But it forms really through denial. Because you just won't be in it. When you get through it and you see what it's like to be emotionally healthy, you can't coexist with emotionally unhealthy people. You just can't. You just go, it's just like two forces that just go like this. It doesn't work. And when you can see it, you just don't really engage in it. You don't need to. it becomes uninteresting. It becomes like quite heavy as opposed to attractive. It used to be attractive for me being around emotionally unhealthy women and emotionally unhealthy too, men too. But that would be more like drugs and partying and going crazy. Whereas the women, it would be like the crazier they were, the better, the more fun it was for me. Now it's like I haven't had one in my field for a long time, but it's draining. I feel like the life force being pulled out of me. And that's when you know you've completed that cycle of needing to go through that. So trauma bonds are hard to break because they're a well-designed system. It's like I said, it's a perfectly designed system that function and work well to keep you isolated, to keep you confused and in denial. Isolation's a big part of it, where you see you're losing connections with others. That's when you also know as a result of the relationship that you're in a trauma bond. Now, how do we get out of this? This is where you have to be willing. And the most powerful question you can ask yourself about this structure is, and this is when I started to break free from my previous relationship 3 years ago, is being in this abusive structure, what was I in denial of? What was I in denial of? When I went through this, I called in a therapist that her and I actually worked with. There's a guy named Richard Granite. He's awesome at this stuff. And I did some work with him around all of this stuff. He taught me a lot of how to identify narcissistic abuse. And his story was that he told me that, you know, when they get more desperate, when the narcissist gets more desperate or the abuser gets more desperate, they make promises. They're like, I'll go to therapy, I'll do whatever it takes. This was textbook what happened to me. And then we'd go to the therapist, and then after 2 or 3 sessions, she would get really overwhelmed and angry and think that we were ganging up on her. This is a really common thing. If you've been in a relationship with someone and you go to multiple different therapists and they think that they're the victim and you're ganging up, you're probably in a relationship with someone with a personality disorder, because this is textbook for what they do. And anyway, we saw this guy who was a top therapist in New York, and he worked with her 2 or 3 times and she bailed out. She's like, and after the second session, she left early and we continued, and he said, she's going to be very difficult to continue work with because she's going to accuse us of ganging up on her. Before she even said it, next session, it's exactly what she did. Anyway, after she decided not to continue with the therapy because we needed a better therapist, we'd split, and I took messages that she sent me to him, and I said, I need you I'm going to send you a series of text messages, and I need you to tell me what I'm in here, what's going on. And he read them, and he said, this is malignant narcissistic personality disorder that you're in. And you know what I did straight away? I said, no, it can't be malignant narcissistic personality disorder. It can't be, no. And he's like, you know what you're in. Okay, I went into denial straight away. And then I started to have to ask the question, what am I in denial of? And I was in denial of who she actually is, not was, is. And I had to ask myself, what's the disturbing truth I didn't want to see? And you have to ask this when you're in a trauma bond. What is the disturbing truth you do not want to see? Because that's the thing that you're in denial of. What blackness do you not want to look at? What darkness do you not want to look at? Because the truth is essentially too painful for us to see that all the good with these people is fake. I'm talking more with this one, like you might be in a trauma bond with someone that's just traumatized, okay? I'm more referring to this as like people that with personality disorders, either narcissism or borderline or histrionic or psychopathy. Those 4 are the ones that they'll make your life a living hell. There's sort of 2 different types of borderline as well. There's the one that's a response to trauma that can be healed, and there's the one where it's like part of their brain is essentially missing. Those are the ones that they'll mess your life up. They will mess your life up. So you have to see that in the more extreme end of this is it's too painful to see that all the good is fake. and it's not real. And to see that all the bad that they do is the real stuff. That's who they are. So because it's too painful, we split. Denial lands right down the middle of that. Okay? It's really important, really, really important to see that. It's harsh, it's cold, it's brutal, but I need this relationship, so I go into denial. I need it. It's like a drug. And so what happens, because I need it, I split off part of my brain that is responsible for critical thinking. Right? This part of critical thinking and being able to judge accurately and assess a situation allows me to access my intuition and allows me to self-protect. Why they're so good at this, the abusers, is they cut that ability off. See it in the world at the moment. People are in an abusive relationship with the government. You see it. They use these same tactics. They gaslight, blame, make it your responsibility, treat you like a child, but then, abuse you at the same time. Government does that to us. They put people into cognitive dissonance. No, like you talk about some conspiracy theories as an example. Oh, the government would never do that. That's cognitive dissonance. They've proven to do it. And same with these people. They'll do it again and again and again, but because you split and you go into denial, what forms is this almost like religious conviction of devotion to this person. I still hear things now. I heard something the other day. My ex's ex-husband, they split 6 years ago. 6 years ago. She got into another relationship a couple of weeks after I cut her off and we split. So it's been 6 years and he's still running around thinking that they're going to get back together. That's the damage it can do to someone. And he's a very, very sick human being because of it. That's the damage it can do. So it's a religious conviction of devotion to the abuser. She toys with him like, the little things that cats play with, like the little toys. That's what she does to him still 6 years later. That's a very, very sick human being because they don't want to see this. They can't ask those questions. They just can't do it. So this is where where we pay attention to not what they say, but what they do. You have to pay attention to what the person that you're in this relationship with does. Okay? Because if you just listen to the words, then that just reinforces the split. Don't listen to the words, watch what they do. Because all of it just gets rooted in denial. Okay? So by saying this statement, this is one of the more powerful statements. So you have to ask the question, what am I in denial of? What don't I want to look at? But essentially you have to say this person is not in love with me. This person doesn't love me. Someone that loves you doesn't treat you like that. I know because I've been in trauma bonds and the way that I've acted in that, I didn't love that person. It was about addiction for me and they had power over me. It was never about love. It was about getting my fix for me. And that person never loved me. And they weren't supposed to love me. And that's okay. It sucks, but it's reality. But where the trauma bond gets a little bit more gnarly is that what it actually says is not only that this person doesn't love me, but I think I'm in love with a monster. Especially for the NPD, ASPD, which is antisocial personality disorder. This inverts your reality, so we double down on denial. Like to admit that we're in love with someone that's hyper abusive and a monster is a very difficult bridge to cross. I have a lot of compassion and understanding for people that really struggle with it. And I never go, just get out of it, get over it, whatever. Because it's very difficult, because I've been through it myself. Generally, however, once you get through it, there's an immense gift, but let's not confuse the fact that we get something out of it with the fact that this person is somehow now good. They're monsters. I've worked with people that have been, put through it in ways that these people that do it to them should be in prison. I have no issue saying it. My mother should be in prison and my ex should 100% be in prison for the stuff that she's done. Severely psychologically abusive human beings, but they just get away with it. but I got a lot of good out of it because I learned the lesson and transcended it. Most people don't make it out. One of my best friends came out of a relationship 2 years ago and he's fucked because of it. Absolutely wrecked because of it. And it's sad to see. And I try to help him as much as I can, but there's a part where I think just part of him has been broken beyond repair because of the woman that he was with. And I worry for him because I wouldn't be surprised if he kills himself, which is really sad. And he's a really close friend of mine. But the woman just broke him. And nothing seems to be working on him. And now his father's about to die, which is full on. So when we get to confront the reality of the truth, however, this is where we can actually start to become free. So when I wake up and begin in the morning, like we don't wake up in the morning and think, yeah, I'm going to get abused by this person. We don't think that way. Okay, we go into denial as a way to cope. Okay, and so we switch off our capacity for critical thinking because then I don't have to lose them. It's actually kind of sad, but it shows a big capacity for commitment and care as well. But then I don't have to lose them. Then when I don't have to lose them, I don't have to deal with the fact that they don't love me. And then I don't have to deal with the fact that I'm in love with a complete fucking lunatic. And that's a hard thing to deal with. So this denial of reality becomes like a skill set, and what you do repetitively, you become good at. So denial is the coping strategy. So you have to ask, what is this costing you? So time, money, health, love, opportunity, connection, probably all of the above. So then we have to start to drain the denial poison out of us in small doses to be free. And we do that by, we have to admit that we've failed. We have to admit that we fail. We have to analyze and accept failures. And we ask ourselves, what did I fail at? How do I know? In what ways? How do I feel about that? So essentially at the basic level is I tried to love this person and it wasn't enough and I failed. I failed. I tried to rescue them and it didn't work. I failed. I tried to do everything and it never worked. I failed. You must accept that you failed. Automatically, when you start to accept that you failed, the trauma bond will start to dissipate. Doesn't mean it'll happen in an hour or 2 hours. It might take a couple of weeks. But the more that you repeat that it failed, the quicker it will go through. This is what, every single time I work with someone in a painful breakup, the first thing we do is we go through this process and we start to admit failure. And that is also, once you do that, you're not in denial anymore. That's why it's so powerful. A trauma bond cannot survive. Listen very carefully. A trauma bond cannot survive in a conditioned environment. Conditioned, remember, repetition creates conditioning. So an environment of conditioned acceptance and ownership cannot keep the trauma bond alive. It cannot keep it alive. Whatever happens in my world, I own it. I'm the common theme in my life, I own it. It doesn't permit victimhood or passivity. Now, as we move through this, we become integrated. We see that what's mine is what's mine and what's yours is what's yours. This is a very powerful structure where you don't split anymore. You stop splitting and you say, that's yours, it's not mine. It's not mine. What is yours and what's mine is mine. So we take responsibility for that. So we say, I don't violate you and you don't get to violate me. And sometimes this will come up, you know, people can get defensive and all that, and there's a whole set of listening filters that create that. But the main thing is I don't violate you and you don't violate me. We validate each other's experience. It's very important to validate each other's experience. Go, even if you don't agree with it, you go, okay, my words had an impact and I can understand that. So a good one is, as you all probably know, I'm pretty direct with my tone. That can upset my woman sometimes because it can feel like I'm being a bit forceful. And she just says, you know, hey, can you just talk a bit more gently towards me? And I just go, sure. People in a victim state will go, well, I wasn't saying anything. You know, that's yours. That's your responsibility. It's not mine. But when we start to actually go, okay, well, this matters to this person. I want this person to feel safe with me. I don't mind adjusting my tone. I know I can be a little bit direct sometimes. That's what happens when you're able to be with someone as opposed to defending a part of your identity. Take full responsibility. Sure, I know I can be a little bit harsh in my tone and a bit direct, and my language can be a bit too penetrating sometimes. I get it. My woman's very sensitive. She's very sweet. She's very soft. Sometimes I can be a bulldozer. I appreciate that because it helps me to become more gentle. And I'm okay with that. And that's an important part to take accountability. And so when I don't violate you and you don't get to violate me, then we can actually start to make progress on a relationship and be with the other person. Because there's 3 levels of relationship when you're in communication. One is hearing someone. That's the top level. The second level is to be understood. Some people get to understood. The deepest level is to be fully witnessed into existence. And that's a whole different experience. That's where love exists, real love. Not like the thoughts, feelings, and emotions of love, but real love beyond trauma and the idea of the you that can actually be with someone fully. That's where it lands. That's where I love you, not just for who you are, but I love you for everything you're not and everything you'll never be too. That's the end goal. And there's 6 filters in the way, an adaptation, a deep program towards life. Underneath that is what love is. I'll be teaching that in a relationship course in January. Very powerful. It's the only time you can ever actually fully relate, because no one, even in this, will have ever been able to listen to anyone ever, because all of our listening is predetermined and conditioned through programmed filters that are already there, that always will be there, and will stay there until you discover them. So trauma bonds have another aspect, which is an external locus of control, and then we become submissive to the control. So we're always looking outwards. So we have to turn that back inwards through accountability and ownership. When we develop an internal locus of control, the denial wall shatters and you cannot be in a trauma bond anymore. Where I really saw this happen is just before I cut contact with my ex, because she tried to hang around for a few months afterwards to get me back. She initiated some type of event that happened where she said her ex-husband, who was a major pain in the ass, sexually assaulted her. And she came over to my house and she was crying. Next day she went and got an AVO against him, she reckons. I don't know if it was true. I don't really care. And she told me about it. And I just said to her, I said, I'm done listening to this stuff. I said, this has been going on for 2 years. It's never going to change. It's not changed since I've known you. I want nothing more to do with this. This is on you. This is up to you to sort out. Don't involve me with this anymore. And she blew up and was like, how could you say that? Blah, blah, blah. I thought you cared, rah, rah. I said, don't ever mention his name or what you're going through with him again. You keep doing this deliberately. And I can see that now. And you and him have brought enough trauma and drama into my life. I want nothing to do with it anymore. She said, fine, I'll never mention it ever again. I said, thanks. That was it. That's where the denial wall shattered. And that's where the cognitive dissonance lifted for me. And in that, I couldn't be in a trauma bond anymore. It was just like 2 different states instantly. And it was life kind of like led me to this in this beautiful way to learn so I can help others with it. So when I started to accept everything, I accepted in that moment that this was never going to change, that she was never going to be different, that she was doing this deliberately, that she was playing me off against him, that she had done this all to orchestrate chaos. And I was like, okay, I accept that. I, in that moment, accepted that she didn't love him and she certainly didn't love me. And that I was in love with an illusion, and she got me. She stung me. And the thing about it was I'm the guy that was seeing everything, but I couldn't see this. That's how good she was. But it was a beautiful lesson for me. Because as I moved through it and got out of it, I learned how to dissolve trauma bonds. I learned narcissistic personality disorder structures. I cleaned up my entire childhood. I individuated, differentiated from my own mother because she was the same. And then I became free. And it's in that self-reflection, internal locus of control. They didn't love me. They were never the person that they said they were, and they never will be, and I got conned. And I'm perfectly okay to admit that. I got conned. And that's okay. And I thought it was love and it wasn't. So she taught me exactly what love wasn't. And she freed me from abusive relationships because I learned how to break a trauma bond through her. She gave me that gift. Denial is your enemy and the abuser's friend. And it's not that she did this to me. No, I was a willing participant. I was an absolute willing participant. And what happened is I got lost in power blindness. And it's so common because the person that has lost in this transaction doesn't think they lost. They continue to spiral into victimhood for years. That's the ex-husband, still in victimhood 6 years later, in cognitive dissonance, can't break out. Because every victim of large-scale trauma that can't deal with the reality of what happened will slip into being similar to the abuser. When the abused becomes too abused and they can't break out of it, they become the abuser. That's the sad story of it. And the trauma bond is a mental and emotional virus that wants to be passed on. Thanks, Ollie. And refusal to take ownership coupled with denial is pure narcissism. Doesn't mean denial in the survival strategy, but refusal to take ownership plus denial, then we start to move into pure narcissism. And so the antidote is complete acceptance and ownership. I was in this. I decided to stay in it. I fell for it. I was dealing with sex addiction at that time through that. I was replaying family conditions. She manipulated me as well as I could manipulate myself. That's how it happens. You take full responsibility for it, leave it behind, and you move into a new state. Complete acceptance, radical ownership, self-responsibility are the answers to narcissism, because narcissism is the complete opposite. Okay, it is not, and this is very important with these people, it is not compassion and empathy towards these people that solves it. You have to be almost cold and ruthless. You cannot give them anything. You cannot give them anything. You can be compassionate and empathic to yourself for getting into it. You were blind, you didn't know you're going into it. I understood it. For me, it was a little bit for a while like, damn it, she got me. But now I go, yeah, she got me. It was a beautiful lesson. I healed a lot as a result from it. So you accept your responsibility for your part in it, or you remain trauma bonded. If you look at this from the victims of narcissistic abuse online, none of them take responsibility for their part in it. I shouldn't say none, but let's sort of illustrate the point. None of them take responsibility that, yeah, I chose that, yes, I was in it. They always blame the narcissist, which is narcissistic itself. Like there's that, I don't know if you guys saw that woman, I don't know if she's Indian or something, the job your love. She said, my friend said, don't love your job, job your love. That woman reckons she dated 5 narcissists. Like full on narcissists. And I'm like, I don't know if I fully buy that, because if you're dating 5, you're the problem for starters. And generally once you date one, like one real one, it's hard to make it out of one in any state, let alone 5. But when you're the victim of it, I tell the story as I was responsible because I got into it. I fell for it, and I take full responsibility for it. I don't blame her for just doing what she was doing. But I take responsibility. I landed in it, and the beautiful thing about it was I learned how to break free from it. Most people never break free from it. That's why they stay online, constantly talking about it, not getting over it, blaming, all the bullshit that comes with it. They're not healed. They haven't overcome it. They're just fallen into narcissism themselves. So you must, to wrap this up, you must be responsible and write a list of all the places where you're responsible. You fell into it. You chose this person. You fell for the lies. You denied yourself. You didn't love yourself. You didn't want to. You engaged in fluid boundaries. You were desperate. You know, you have a weakness for hot women or hot men. Yeah, cool. I had a massive weakness for that. I've just fully admit it. It's like, okay, cool. I had a sex addiction. I had a problem with it. Just take full responsibility. And when you start to do that, this starts to dissolve and you go, yes, I had a problem, but I've overcome it. It's like the 99% of my work is walking through people what I've overcome. You can't really learn this shit unless you walk through it. Which, would I wish it on anyone? No. But I needed it to be able to help people. And so this is what you do. You have to be fully responsible. You know, and that's okay. The body desires pleasure. That's okay. It desires escapism. That's okay. Most people grow up in very traumatic environments, so these ways out of it are through pleasure and relationships. Because let's be fair, most of these relationships are not really based in love bombing and all that. It's sex bombing, essentially. That's what it is. It's seduction and it's sex that ties you together, because that's the most powerful connection piece that we can potentially have, or one of. And then you become hungry and greedy for something, and it got the better of you. Just be fucking honest about it. It got the better of me. And she knew how to prey on my weakness. 8 out of 10 trauma bonds will be sexual based. And it's done like that for a deliberate reason. And the key here is humility. Because if I can get stung, anyone can get stung. So don't beat yourself too much about it. Right? And the thing about it is, and this is where it's an important key as well, and this sounds a little bit brutal, stop talking about it if you're in it. The more you go into story and talk about it over and over and over again, the longer it lasts, the harder it is to break out of. I got a really good mate of mine that has been in like this same sort of thing for 3 years since they've split up. And I'm like, man, shut the fuck up. You got to stop talking about it. But then he'll just go find someone else to talk to about it that'll listen. That's a trauma bond. And I've said that to him. I'm like, dude, I've got a whole workshop on trauma bonding I can give you. I can teach you about it. You're in a trauma bond. You're in cognitive dissonance. Your ex is probably narcissistic. You don't get stung for 3 years unless there's severe trauma there. And the ex prior to that was took 5 years to get over this woman. I'm like, mate, that's not normal. It doesn't take 3 years to get over someone. So you need to stop talking about it. And full self-responsibility is really where it hits. But you've got to be ready to snap out of the denial. And then decondition through repetition. You failed, it's okay. You're in love with a lunatic, that's okay. You desired connection and love and sex and all of that, that's okay. It's all right. We all want that on some level, and that's what happens. Full self-responsibility. I played into this, I fell for it, I got conned. The bad is who they are, the good is who they pretend to be. What are you in denial of? And you have to look that square in the face. And the minute that you do that, the trauma bond will dissolve. All right, I'm going to follow this up in a couple of weeks with a lesson on narcissism, because I think that's another important structure that people really need to know a little more about. So thanks for today. I did have another session that I did while I was away, but the file got, was it corrupted? It wasn't. So I've still got to get the Q&A done, which I will do because there's some good ones. Saskia, you asked some great questions, which I'm going to get to for you, so that I would. And so I'll see you guys in 2 weeks. If you need anything, chuck it up. I'll get this up as soon as possible. Chuck it up on the school community. Otherwise, I appreciate you all. Much love. Have a great day, night, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. And thank you all for giving me the opportunity to do this and teach you. Thanks, guys. Catch you later.